Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming to Ignite, and thank you for coming to my session. I'm sure that many of you are managing lots of SQL Server instances on-premise or in a hosting environment. I'm sure you have lots of SQL databases on those instances. And probably many of you have been thinking about potentially removing some of the burden that comes with the management and potentially giving that burden to somebody else. And maybe doing it by migrating to cloud, right? So if that's the case, then you are in the right place. This is the right session. My name is Dražen. I'm a program manager in SQL engineering team. And my team believes that we have a product for you that will enable you to take almost any of your workloads, SQL Server workloads from on-premise, and easily lift them and shift them into cloud. And not any cloud, PaaS, Platform as a Service, where you will maximize your benefits that come from automatic management and everything being built in. I would also like to introduce one of the customers from our private preview, Chris Mitchell from Paradigm. Thank you for coming today, Chris. Chris will tell you a story about their experiences from private preview a little bit later on during the session. So let's kick off. Session objectives. I would like to first and foremost introduce the managed instance in some more detail. We've been announcing managed instance for a while. We started in late April, May. We didn't tell anyone almost anything about it except that it was supposed to make very easy migration to cloud. You've seen a very short glimpses into managed instance at the Scott Guthrie's keynote. You saw a demo done by Lara Rubelki. Very cool demo. Lindsay Allen also had a session on Monday. Rohan Kumar was talking about it a little bit. I've done a short session on Monday. Now it's time to go into some more detail and tell you more about it. We're not announcing the public preview yet, so I will not be able to give you 100% precision on what will be there in public preview, but the point is to definitely give you much more than we were giving information so far. Then, hopefully, this will help you decide if managed instance could be the best destination for your cloud migration. And finally, I would like to tell you a little bit about timelines, where we are right now, what we're doing, what are the next steps, and of course the roadmap, what we plan roughly to deliver in public preview, and then also after that. The key thing that I would like you to take away from this session today is hopefully that managed instance is the best platform as a service destination for all SQL workloads with easy lift and shift migration. That's the one thing that if you should remember, please remember this thing from this session. Okay, so why would you modernize by moving to cloud in the first place? What is in it for you? Well, what is the motivation? Well, we have seen some patterns with our customers, working with them over the last couple of years, and you will probably identify yourselves with one of these patterns. People want to increase productivity and decrease costs. That's the number one motivator. By this, I mean that their current data center, they have to manage hardware, they have to worry about end of life of hardware, they have to, it's simply just too costly and complex to manage. Or they have a hosting solution, but that's also high maintenance too. They were hoping for a lower maintenance cost when they started on that journey. On the other hand, we're also seeing people who would like to accelerate their business growth by moving to cloud, because cloud also gives lots of opportunities. It is not only a problem solution, it is a huge opportunity. So for example, there are people who would like to make use of all of the new features that we develop in SQL as soon as they're out there and try get that competitive edge over the competition or just make their lives easier and increase their productivity this way too. Or there are companies that would like to expand their reach and from a single region go into a global business. Because Azure today offers you 40-ish regions around the world. The number keeps growing all the time, right? And actually deploying your application in one of those regions is just the same as deploying it everywhere else, right? So once you've done it, you can expand. It's a business thing, not a technical thing anymore. And DocuSign, our public reference customer, that Scott Guthrie mentioned during his keynote, it falls into this category. They are expanding their business globally using Azure Cloud. This is a question that we commonly get, and very frequently, how to choose between IaaS and PaaS, infrastructure as a service versus platform as a service. And I would say that if you need control or access to the operating system, if you need to run your application or some agents side by side by the database server, then you should go for infrastructure as a service. Pretty much in all other cases, we would recommend PaaS. PaaS will simply give you much better total cost of ownership, productivity, and it will enable you to focus on your business while putting your databases on autopilot. So what do I mean when I say focus on your business? Well, here in this table, column number 1, your work so far, right? Column number 2, how PaaS helps you do this. So for example, you'll be doing hardware purchasing and management for your data center. And then you're worrying about Windows updates and end of life for components and increasing capacity on time so that you don't run out. In cloud, this is built in. And cloud scales on demand. So when you need capacity, you will get capacity. When you do not need it, you can return it. That's it. You've been protecting your data with backups. But it's not only taking backups, right? It's also checking that the backups are healthy and you can restore them. It's also worrying about retention, keeping them for as long as you have to keep them, and so on. So in PaaS, this is built in. Automatic backups with point-in-time restore capabilities out of the box. Then high availability implementation or disaster recovery implementation. Nice features are out there. Still, it's work that you need to do. In PaaS, this is built in. In terms of HA, we're giving 4 nines SLAs, and we're doing automatic failovers. And for disaster recovery, we have geo-redundant backups that automatically get copied into another region, or active geo-replication that gives RPO up to 5 seconds, which is very, very neat. And it can be set up in 3 clicks. Then ensuring compliance with standards on your own is definitely a pain in the neck. Lots of spreadsheets, lots of procedures, lots of looking at various things. In cloud, our services have been certified to be compliant. And furthermore, we're giving you easy-to-use tools, such as some tools that have been shown this week earlier, like vulnerability assessment, that would help you remain compliant with any actions you're doing on those databases. Then rolling out updates and upgrades, definitely a pain, right? Different versions out there, different applications, different sensitivity, and so on. And now you need to roll out a security patch or something, right? Or upgrade. We're taking this over in PaaS. You don't have to worry about this anymore, and that's a huge relief. Monitoring, troubleshooting, and managing at scale. If you have hundreds of instances, thousands of databases, in cloud, we will provide solutions that will help you do it out of the box, such as the Operations Management Suite that was also demoed earlier this week. And we're even building intelligence on top of that to act as your assistant, look after worrisome patterns, and point your way to those patterns in case they happen. So you get a root cause analysis you can mitigate easily. So that's the Intelligent Insights new feature that we've launched this week. And finally, if you've been tuning and maintaining predictable performance, we know that this is the least automated DBA task out there. We're automating it. We're building automatic performance tuning. It's in general availability. We're looking after indexes. We're looking after plan regressions, and we will be doing more. So there is a lot here, right? So how to get there? That's the crucial question on this session today. We know that the road to cloud looks daunting sometimes, right? It looks like a winding road with lots of risks along the way. Security, performance, you worry about a lot of things. But how about actually migrating there and getting all the PaaS benefits without paying a high migration cost? If you're answering this question with yes, then managed instance is the right thing for you. It is being built for you as we speak. And the crucial point with managed instance is that managed instance will bring PaaS closer to you. It makes PaaS look a lot more like what you're used to on-premise. So it feels cozy and familiar, right? And it makes the road to PaaS straightforward so that the migration becomes easier. Okay, down to the point. What is SQL Database Managed Instance? A lot of people ask, you have PaaS and you have Managed Instance, so those are two things. No, that's wrong. SQL Database Managed Instance is a new flavor of our Azure SQL Database service. So far, we had standalone databases, we had elastic pools, and you could use those. Now we're introducing a third flavor, Managed Instance, which will essentially expose the entire SQL instance and offer it as a service. So if you may, it is instance as a service. And it's been optimized for easy lift and shift of on-premise apps. Why? Because the surface area is very, very close to what you have on-premise on SQL Server. That's the key ingredient. We have changed the architecture of the service to an extent, and it's a significant work to do it, in order to expose instances instead of individual databases. But with that exposure and opening up the instance, we get a lot of the surface area compatibility with SQL Server and what you're used to doing on-premise. But it's still fully managed PaaS. We do not intend to make this a semi-IaaS, semi-PaaS solution. This is a fully managed PaaS. It has been built on the same infrastructure as Azure SQL Database, and it will offer all of the PaaS features that we have been talking about this week for Azure SQL Database and databases out there right now. But we're going even further, right? The main reason why we're changing the architecture, second main reason, aside for exposing the instance, is actually providing native support for virtual networks. We know that a huge concern has been isolation. What's going on? Where is my database in the cloud? How it is separated from everything else, right? Why isn't it in a VNet? Well, now it will be. Managed instances will be injected into your VNets. And you could assign them private IP addresses. No public IP, no internet visibility whatsoever. And finally, we're innovating on the business side as well, not just on the engineering side. We are introducing a new business model with managed instance that will be very competitive. And by competitive, I mean when you compare it with our competitors, of course. Transparent, which means that we will show you more about what resources you're using, so you can decide what resources you actually need, and then you can pay for those resources. And frictionless, because we will enable you to use your existing on-premise investments into SQL licenses to get large discounts in managed instance in cloud. So how about that? Okay, and now let me just strengthen the point that managed instance will be PaaS. Yes, everything that we went through on this table, managed instance will offer by its general availability, which will happen sometime next year. Right? So we are on a path. We're developing all these things. Some of them are easy to develop, some not so much. So we'll introduce all of these features by the general availability. So let's not get confused. Managed instance is PaaS, and it will be PaaS. Okay. So how does the journey to PaaS look like with managed instances? Before we go there, I would actually want to say one very important thing which is commonly not known, and that is even before managed instance comes, there is a likelihood that some of your applications can move to Azure SQL DB as it is today without friction. We've seen it with our MS IT group. A certain far from trivial percentage of their applications could move to cloud today, even without managed instance. We have customers who have been moving and who have been very successful in Azure SQL Database. So I would invite you to actually download and run Data Migration Assistant. It's a tool that you could run, point to instances on premise. It would do the assessment automatically for you, and it would give you a report that would show you whether a database application could move to Azure SQL Database today. This was important to land. There's no reason to wait for all of your apps. Some of them will need to wait for managed instance, not all. Okay, So what are we doing to remove security and isolation concerns? This tends to be the major block, so I'm starting with this one. Right? So we are already redesigning the service in such a way so that we place all of your managed instances into something that we call virtual cluster, and that virtual cluster goes into your VNet. At the time of creation of an instance, you provide a VNet. It's an existing VNet you have, Azure Virtual Network, and we inject instances into that network. This provides complete tenant isolation, and by tenant I mean you, from everything else that is happening in the service. And then you can use a VPN solution or an express route to basically connect your virtual network to your on-premises network. With VPN, it's an encryption-based solution. With express route, it actually goes through the network of an express route provider. It does not go to public internet, ever. Right? So if you put private IPs into your managed instances, and you have your IP address range on-prem, it could all work. They could communicate. You're not going through public internet at all. What to do with web front ends or something that you want to run as an app server in the cloud and then connect from there, right? Well, you could have a front end VNet that could house your web applications, VMs running any app there, you name it. And then from any client, you could connect to a publicly exposed endpoint in that front end VNet. Right? And then you could peer that VNet with your backend VNet that houses managed instances, right? And the communication in the backend happens through private IP addresses, subnets, right? So this may be your architecture, or you may also do something like this. You could actually run your front end and managed instances in the same VNet, but in different subnets. And then you could expose a public endpoint on the front end side. Still in the back end, all of the communication between these subnets would go over a closed private network. Does this make sense? Any questions? Okay, it's important to say that we're not innovating with VNets, right? Whatever is out there publicly available as documentation for VNets, that applies. We are injecting managed instances into VNets, period, right? So that's the way to think about it. Now, the next usual question that comes around is, what about authentication? What about single sign-on, right? So let's imagine you have that user there. It's an existing domain user, and they have just loaded your web UI, and they would like to authenticate, right? And now, of course, they would expect that if they provide their AD credentials, it should work, right? Well, the answer is yes, it could work, because managed instances will support Azure Active Directory. Now, this is not new to SQL Database. SQL Database today also supports Azure Active Directory authentication. And then, from that point on, you can federate the Azure Active Directory, your tenant in Azure Active Directory, with your on-premise Active Directory via something called AD Connect. It's a tool that encapsulates several ways of connecting Azure Active Directory with existing Active Directories. One of the ways, and most powerful one, probably also the most hardest to set up, is ADFS. But then you have full pass-through authentication. Basically, these credentials will go all the way to the on-premise AD and get authenticated there. So again, we're not innovating with Active Directory. We are enabling this path through managed instances. That's the way to think about it. And then let's pay a little bit of attention to easy migration, thanks to nearly 100% compat with SQL Server. So what do I mean by nearly 100%? There is always a caveat that it's nearly, right? Well, that's true. Some features will be hard to implement in the cloud, especially those that have direct dependency on the operating system, like file stream and file table. So those will definitely not be in the first waves when we go to public preview and some months into it. Other than that, And the remote should work. There it is. Other than that, we will offer for data migration native backup restore. No backpacks, etc. You take a backup on premise on any of the versions since 2005 onwards. You upload the backup to Azure Blob Storage, restore it into managed instance. That's it. Log shipping will work through database migration service, the automated service that will migrate your instances. I will mention that a little bit later. Through this, we will be providing you minimum downtime migrations sometime later in the next couple of months. So programmability will introduce global temp tables, cross-database queries and transactions, linked servers, and CLR. CLR will work since this is an encapsulated and isolated environment. Really, you're not posing any risks by running any code there to anyone but yourself. So we're going to open up CLR. Of course, you keep some of the responsibility to check the CLR modules and make sure that you know what they're doing, right? But cross-database queries and transactions and linked servers will work, which is very nice. Lots of applications have dependency on these features. In security, we intend to provide the features that you have been most relying on. I will not go into every single security feature. Whatever is encapsulated in the SQL engine will work. That's the way to think about it. I have listed here transparent database encryption, SQL audit, row-level security, always encrypted, and so on. We'll have pretty much everything out there, except threat detection early on in the public preview. That will come a little bit later, dynamic data masking perhaps. On the operational side, we will expose DMVs and X events. Maybe not 100% of them, but we will expose a lot so that you can have an insight into what's going on with your databases. Query Store will be on by default for managed instances, the same way as it is in Azure SQL Database today. Query Store came with SQL Server 2016. It's what we like to call flight data recorder for databases. It very efficiently keeps track of your workloads. And at any point in time, if you have a performance incident, the data is already there, right? You can go and troubleshoot with the data that has already been saved. Very powerful. SQL Agent, of course, lots of SQL Agent jobs. They do just about everything. They also run some other features. A key component for operationalization, that's going to work. And DBmail will work. We will not have an SMTP server within managed instance. So in that connection to your on-premise network, you will have to provide an SMTP server. But then DBmail can use that SMTP server in your network. So that's roughly the scope of this feature for the time being. And then when we talk about various scenarios, like service broker, reliable messaging within a single instance or between instances, then change data capture if you're tracking data changes, taking deltas and maybe offloading that to a data warehouse, or you're doing transactional replication and you would like to do so either from on-premise to managed instance to managed instance, or managed instance to something else, that will work. This is very nice, for example, if you want to take a part of your schema, offload it to a different system and do reporting on that. That's one of the common scenarios there. And of course, I already made this note, but I would like to repeat it here. We are currently in late stages of the private preview, so note that majority of these features are coming with public preview, but some of them may not come until a little bit later on. I cannot guarantee an exact list at this point in time. Okay, so what to do with the other things that are not SQL Database Engine? A lot of you have SSIS, SSAS, SSRS. So what to do with these? Well, these will not be installed side by side with the managed instance. We're installing the database engine and all of its features, SSIS, SSAS, and SSRS, we will not install on the same machine. But there are choices. For SSIS, this week we are releasing a new SSIS PaaS service. It is basically SSIS running within Azure Data Factory in its integration runtime. It will offer full compatibility for your SSIS packages. I have a slide on that, so I will tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. SSIS, there is already an Azure analysis service where you can run your roll-up models. So we suggest that route for moving roll-up models. Of course, there's always the fallback, which is virtual machines. You could run these services in Azure virtual machines if for any reason you cannot use these PaaS services. For SSRS, we unfortunately do not have a lift and shift into PaaS, kind of a service, so that you could do your reporting server as PaaS. So the recommended solution for that is either run it in a virtual machine or potentially think about switching to Power BI. Power BI is a very nice, new, and very popular service. It's very powerful. We use it a lot. Very easy to use, very easy to create reports, so maybe you should consider that. Okay, SSIS service that I have mentioned, your way to migrate SSIS packages into cloud. There is a session on Friday on 9 a.m., Hyatt Plaza International, done by Sandy Vinarco. I would recommend this session. We work with this team a lot during the private preview to make sure that SSIS service works well with managed instance. And the way it will work, you can upload your SSIS packages to this service. You will have an instance of this service in the cloud. Upload your packages there. Now, you can author your packages through SSDT and deploy them as well using managed instance as the catalog store. Managed instance will be able to hold the SSIS DB. And also, you can trigger your workflows in SSIS from the SQL agent that runs within the managed instance, right? So you pretty much should have the setup that you're having today. So I would suggest going to this session, asking about any potential drill down questions, issues, and so on, and you will get more information on Friday. And finally, we talked about a lot of components here, the engine, SSIS, SSAS, there are agent jobs, there are many things. So a migration, manually moving these things to cloud, making them work there, will not be hard. It will be much, much easier than before. But still, you could use some automation, and you could use a nice wizard to get you through this process, right? And this is exactly what database management service, database migration service is, sorry. This service will go to public preview soon. We also work with this team very closely to make sure it works with Azure SQL Database and Managed Instance. It will offer a 5 or 6 step wizard to basically run the assessment. You set it up, set up the source, set up the destination, it runs an assessments, and it can also move databases to cloud. So this is what Lara Rubelki has shown at the keynote. And this session tomorrow at 11:30 is a very good one to go to learn more about database migration service. This service will expand also its support for various sources and destinations for migration in time. Okay, and then we come to the money, or very close to the money, because we're not sharing prices yet. But at least we're going to give you a frame how we're thinking about the new business model. So the whole idea is to give more flexibility. You can basically choose compute and storage separately according to your needs. You may have a very compute-intensive instance that does not need a whole lot of storage space. Or vice versa, you may have a very large storage requirements, but it's not very compute intensive. And this new model has been tweaked and made so that you can make those choices and pay for each of those resources separately, right? So we will have 2 service tiers, general purpose and business critical. General purpose will be for most applications, high SLA, fast remote storage, Azure Premium Storage, very similar to the one being used by SQL Database standard tier today. I mean, the implementation very similar, the storage is completely the same. Business critical tier with very high SLAs and super fast local SSD storage. And this is unique in the market when it comes to performance of storage, but it's limited to up to 4 terabytes in the near future. Whereas with local storage and general purpose tier, you can go up to 35 terabytes per instance. Now have in mind that these are instances, these are not single databases. So whatever you see here goes to an instance. Instance is what holds your resources, right? And the instance can hold a lot of databases, right? And that's the point. That's just like on-prem. Instance works on a virtual machine or a machine, right? And it has its resources. So we're offering 3 sizes initially of compute for these instances. 8 cores, 16 cores, and 24 cores. Now you may see a little letter V next to a V core. That means virtual core. We will be expressing our compute units as virtual cores going forward. Initially, in our current hardware generation of the SQL database, V cores will map to physical cores. So you can think of these as 8 cores, 16 cores, and 24 cores. And what this is very nice, we are going to do a mapping between your on-premise SQL Server license investments onto these cores, right? And this is what we call Azure Hybrid Use benefit. You will be able to come and say, I have enough of my existing SQL Server licenses, Standard Edition and Enterprise Edition, and get a large discount in the cloud on managed instances. And this is really, really nice. We will also charge separately for backup storage if the retention requested is longer than 7 days. The first 7 days of backup retention will be for free. Beyond 7 days, we charge for the delta. It will be in certain number of cents, dollars per gigabyte per month. It will be competitive on the market. And IOPS will also be charged certain number of cents per million IOPS. Okay, so this is roughly it about the business model. You may have noticed there are no DTUs here. If somebody is familiar with the current business model of SQL database, there are no DTUs, managed instances going out with this model, completely separated compute and storage, no obscure units. Okay, now the stories from private preview, and we have basically Chris, in a minute, will come here and tell his story. I will start with Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young started participating in our private preview very early on. They were among the first customers to actually get an instance in a VNet and then see how that's working and work with us. So by now, they have successfully done a single app migration, and they've seen that it works. They are interested, in fact, strategically in moving all of their apps to cloud, and they would like to achieve that goal in some timeline. And their motivation is lowering their total cost of ownership and increasing productivity. So what I mentioned earlier before. Shankar, their engineering lead, was not able to come today, but in his quote, he's saying, we were able to migrate an app with zero friction to a managed instance with features like CLR and SQL Agent just working. And that's the whole point, right? After this first migration, they're looking at database migration service as a tool that will help them do it at scale, like repeat the migration for 100 or 200 times, right? And that's how they're approaching it, and that's why they're still in the preview, continuing to explore and try scenarios. That having said, I would like to invite Chris from Caradigm to tell us a little bit about his company, who they are, what they intend to do with the cloud, and what is their experience from the private preview so far.
Thanks, Reza. Chris. Yep. So Caradigm is a healthcare company, and we build enterprise global applications that do data analytics, data warehousing, population health management. So the slide that Drazen showed around security and isolation was super important to us, right? And that's why we didn't go into a SQL Azure model. So when we were invited to participate in this preview, it was really interesting for us. And let me show some of the kind of the decisions of what we're looking at. So why we're thinking about moving from our private cloud into more of a managed cloud. CapEx versus OpEx is a big one, right? We have high capital expenditures within our private cloud. It's really hard to understand what cost per tenant is. So you get these big invoices that are looking at things like square footage of my cage and power consumption and stuff like that, and distilling that down to, okay, now I have to build some complicated algorithm to determine how many U's I'm using for each customer, and this just doesn't work very well, right? Scale up and down comes at a really high cost. As I grow, if I grow beyond my cage, it becomes really troublesome, right? Then I have to go lease new space, build a new cage, potentially get a bigger cage, and then move hardware around. Really, really big challenge. Environment management, unless I go build a lot of the tools myself, now I've got low utilization environments, right? I have to make sure that I have capacity available for my test environments, my pre-production environments, my production environments, my disaster recovery environments. All of that is sitting up and running, and it's not utilized a lot of the time. And I also have to build out those environments for those peak times, right? I can't easily scale on those. My DBAs and my DevOps team, they have a lot of extra work to do. We got to patch all those environments. We got to monitor all those environments. We got to upgrade. If we want to take advantage of SQL 2017, we got to go and upgrade. And because we have that isolation, we have to upgrade every single customer separately, right? And so it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. One advantage that we've seen before of being in a private cloud is on the SQL licensing model. We can put all of our SQL instances and virtualize them on one physical box and then pay licenses for that physical cores versus the virtual cores. With managed instance, they're gonna, we haven't seen that available for us because if you're in IaaS, you don't have those physical cores, so you can't take advantage of it. We don't get those cost savings. With managed instance, they're gonna provide a method for that where I think it's like a 4-for-1 on the general deal. So you can get a 4-for-1 deal on your cores if you bring your own license. And then the technical advantages are really around, kind of what I mentioned, like, look, when we did the migration, it was really smooth. There was no loss at all. We were able to do it in an aspect of where there's minimal downtime. And now I get all the great features of 2017 without having to go through that upgrade. So I can start taking advantage of those new features a lot sooner with a lot less problem. And because it's a managed instance, it's really just like the SQL that we know and love, right? Like we can use the same tools. It feels very familiar to my DBA team and my DevOps. Let me hop into a demo here. Let's see if this is.
I'll just switch you to your.
Yeah, I got to log in and everything too. So. All right. Yeah, go ahead. All right. So hopefully nothing's timed out here. So as you can see, this is so I'm basically RDP'd into a Azure VM where we're running our front end, and this is SSMS 2017 pointing at that, and I just wanted to kind of show you the hey, nothing up my sleeve aspect here. So it looks just like you're used to, right? This is the database here, the managed instance name. Let me pop up our app. Of course, we've timed out, so we'll log out of here. So what I'm opening up is our applications management console, and I just wanted to show you here that we're pointing at the managed instance name as well. So here on our data host, you can see that nice long name. So we're definitely hitting the same database. And then I'm gonna open up our application. And this application is like one component of our product where we allow healthcare workers to basically do some query building themselves without having to know SQL. So our product, what our main product does on the data warehousing side is it collects a bunch of data from multiple sources. Sources are really disparate at hospitals, and so we get all that data from all these different sources, we aggregate it, we normalize it, and we wrap it with an entity model. So that then we can build applications on top of that and give hospitals a lot of visibility into what's going on and analytics that they need, both for cost control as well for better care of the patients. And then we also build applications that help them look at that. So I'm going to just open up. So we've made some changes to the code, but the experience that we had working in the private preview, especially if you consider that it's two separate companies working with pre-release code, right? We're basically using their dev environment. So everyone that does software development knows that sometimes you break a few eggs, so you have some of those problems as well. And then the other problems that we had in there were around just features don't exist yet that we're dependent on, right? And so, we wanted to do a Windows authentication model, but that path wasn't available yet. But we're able to work around it, and those were the only really changes that we had to do within our application, is just waiting for those features to come. I can drill in here, open up a particular patient. So this kind of gives you some of the read. This is now pulling back data from multiple tables and multiple databases and displaying it real time and quick. So I can show you a little bit read there. We can do some write action, so I can create a new list. Let's pretend that I'm gonna run a study for an allergy study or something like that, right? And I'm gonna pull back people that have pollen allergy that live in my city. So let's close this. So behind the scenes, so you can imagine, this isn't, it gives you an idea that there's a lot of compatibility here. So let's get all females. It's dynamically building SQL queries, right? So these are, dynamically on the fly written SQL queries that are there. I know that I've pulled back data, so you're still seeing the reads. Let's add these to a campaign so you can see that we're actually writing to. So I'm going to add them to my allergy campaign. Now I can go and basically use these guys within my application elsewhere and put together a plan of care for those people and send them through some trial. But you can see they've been added to the campaign. So we're doing writes as well. It's been I think it's been a really good experience with these guys. It's been really smooth. We didn't see any data loss when we did the migration services, and most of the functionalities worked. Kind of our next steps are really looking at performance with a high volume database. Some of our larger customers run 10 terabytes. We've tested up to 50 gigabytes so far, so we need to bump up that on some of our performance stuff and just look at how that's going to work. But overall, really good experience. So I want to thank Drazen and his team for all the hard work that they put together.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. So, sorry. So before I go to my demo, and I will spend a lot of time on it out of what we have left, I'd like to make a few comments on our private preview. We're very thankful to our customers for participating with us from early on and going through this journey really together. We've announced Managed Instance somewhere late April. We had roughly about 200 signups each month between Managed Instance and Database Migration Service for that private preview. By now we had like 800, 200 more through the internal channels, Microsoft accounts that we're bringing in their customers. If some of you have applied for the private preview and we were not able to get you fully into the preview and get you a managed instance to test, I sincerely apologize. We are limited in capacity in terms of working with those customers. We need to work very closely with them. And that was probably the reason if you didn't get in. We are going to make sure that we get to public preview as soon as possible, and that as soon as possible, many more people will get the chance to try out managed instance. The interest so far was really, really good. Okay, so I will now do a demo. Let me just switch to my machine. Okay, so I will do a demo where I show you how we migrate. I may even come back to the slide just a moment, because I have a slide on it. Yeah, so I already done a short demo at Lindsay's session, so if you have seen that, it will be similar, but I will expand. Here, today, I'm also going to show VNet. I have an instance in a VNet, in one subnet. I have a VM in another subnet, and that's the VM from which I'm going to demo, right? I will remote desktop to that VM and demo from there. I will take a backup on the SQL Server 2012 instance locally. I will upload it to Azure Blob Storage, go to Managed Instance, connect and restore those databases, and then I will repoint the app. The point is that the app should work, the little demo app that I have created. Then I will go a little bit into the operational aspects, copy over a SQL agent job and make that run, and also I will show a few other things that I will keep as a surprise for now. Okay, so here we are. This is my small demo application. It's a simulation of a reporting app. It just, when I run it, it will run with the local instance named MIDemo, version 11. And what it does customers with top 10 transactions, and on some criteria, it runs a query and displays it here. Not very complex, but we'll see what it uses under the hood later on. And now I am using these three databases here, local master DataDB, shared master DataDB, and tenant DataDB. And I can back these databases up as I am used to. Of course, this is SQL Server 2012. They will be done in a local folder right here. And then I can take Azure Blob Storage Explorer. I am now looking at my Azure Blob Storage account. This is me, DRASUMIC, my storage, and DB Backups folder. And I already have these databases here, but I can replace them. That's not a big issue. Let me select the three local ones and say upload. Now this will ask me whether I want to do a replace. Yes, I want to replace. And now it does an upload here. I have the status being updated. It's being uploaded. And then it's done. Now I can go and connect to my managed instance right here. I have already done so. This is on one of our test clusters. It says instance ZTR5, that's test ring 5, Cloud Lifter. Cloud Lifter was the project name for this managed instance. So if you heard the phrase Cloud Lifter, that's the code name. That's why it's everywhere in these demos and code that we've been developing. And here, I first need to create a credential so that I can access my Blob Storage account and pick up backups from there. I will run this, and the credential is created and is displayed right here. This is my storage account credential. Then I go to the next step, and I can run a database restore from the managed instance. And as this runs, it will actually go through all the necessary upgrade steps because I started from version SQL Server 2012, and it will go to the latest and greatest that we are running in Azure SQL Database. Managed instance will also be running on the latest and greatest bits. So there are upgrade steps that this thing needs to go through as it restores. Other than that, the command is really like any command that you would run to restore a DB. The difference is here, it's not a local file path or a share that you would use on premise. It's a URL to the Azure Blob Storage account and the particular folder where backups are, for which you also have the access credentials. Now that I have restored the databases, they're here: local master DataDB, shared master DataDB, tenant DataDB. What is left to do, I will take this server name from here, copy it, go to the app, to settings and copy it here. Instead of local, I want to connect to the managed instance up in the cloud, right? Then I do change the connection string, and the application is now supposed to connect to the Cloud Lifter cluster, right? Go run it. Oops, and it says, an error occurred. The execution of user code in the .NET framework is disabled. Enable CLR, enabled configuration options. Oh, so in my managed instance, I haven't enabled CLR yet, right? Okay, cool. So let's go do that. My regular SP configure CLR enabled. I will just run it here. Let's see what we've done. Is it okay? Yes, CLR is now enabled. Let's go to the app, run it now, and there it goes. It runs, and it has connected to the Cloud Lifter cluster instance Z on tenant ring 5, right? So this is my app migration. This is my app migration, and now I'm sure that all of the developers and the app teams in the audience are very happy because the app works, right? No changes, they're done. Now, what about maintaining this and operationalizing and keeping it running well through the years, right? What about the operational stuff? What about SQL Agent? That's also an important aspect to look at here. So let's go to the on-premise instance. On-premise, I have a SQL Agent job that says rebuild indexes. So sounds like that would be useful in the cloud too, at least until we deploy a full index maintenance solution through the automatic performance tuning, which we are doing, by the way. But let's say that you still want to keep maintaining your indexes, at least for the first while, until you see how the cloud automation works, right, to build confidence. So that's fine. Why don't you just script this job out? I'll just do a select all, copy. Go to the window from which I've connected to the managed instance. It's easier for me to work with two windows than to connect to two systems from the same one. Copy this, paste this over in its entirety, just press F5, and that's it, right? And when I go here and refresh the list of jobs, well, there I go. Rebuild indexes job is there, right? So what have I done? I have just scripted it out, ran it with the managed instance, and it's there, right? So full compatibility for SQL Agent. And now one other thing that I could try is see what exactly is this application running. This application is running on my VM, as I said. That's the VM that's in the same VNet, but a different subnet than the managed instance. So I don't have the code of the application, but that shouldn't stop me from seeing what the application is doing with the database, right? And in fact, we can take a look at what the application is doing in a minute by running a tool that may be very well known to many of you, which is SQL Profiler, SQL Server Profiler. Yes, I know the whole story about SQL Server Profiler, but the whole point here is legacy and compatibility, right? So I'm showing you compatibility also for things that we have deprecated, at least formally. So a new trace, I'm going to connect to the same managed instance. I'm going to say this is my MI1 trace, it's standard, and run. And it runs. So I'm now looking at the workload that's running against this managed instance from SQL Profiler. So I'm not going to dive deeper into SQL Profiler, but I am going to look at some stored procedures here, and I have this get user transactions procedure that seems interesting. So let me go and find it here. I will find it here in the list of stored procedures. script that out just to show you what that runs. And here's the code for the stored procedure. Further down here in the body of the procedure, there's a query running, and that query is using the dbo.addText, which is a CLR scalar valued function. And it also does a cross-DB join between the table user transactions in this tenant data DB with the users table in local master data DB, right? So there's a cross-DB join right there, right? So we're not faking it in the app. These things actually really work. And one aspect that we didn't look at and would be very interesting to look at is the VNet and the network layer, right? So I'm just going to show you a little bit of what this looks like. I am now within the VM that's within the VNet, and I am going to ping a database that I have created previously, and this is a SQL Azure database. It has a public endpoint, right? And when I ping this, now ping is obviously off in our service, so there's no point in pinging it to get a ping, but I'm just doing this to show the resolution of the DNS, and it's a public IP address, right? So this is a public IP address. Now, what if I do the same with my managed instance, right? So what will we see? We get the name resolved, but now it's a private IP range, right? It's 10.1.1.101. So there's no public IP address on this managed instance, right? So the only way it can work is from this VM. I can't actually connect to it from my laptop, right? That doesn't work because it's invisible. And if I see an IP config for this VM, we'll see that this has an IP address of 10.1.0.4, so it's in a different subnet, right? 10.1.1, and this is 10.1.0. So it's a different subnet in the same VNet, and that's how we establish connectivity between these two entities here. And that's why I can run all these demos from the VM. And finally, one thing that I want to show you, I got a challenge on Monday. I was doing this demo, and then someone from the audience came and said, this is all great, but you haven't shown us the Azure portal, right? And he was right. I mean, I could have been showing you an on-premise instance of SQL Server, right? which I hope I have already proved that I'm not doing by now, right? But I accepted the challenge, and in fact, the team has deployed the first bits of Azure portal support in production like yesterday. So today I get to show you. Today I will just stop the SQL profiler. So today I get to show you the portal. That is agile development, right? So in my Azure portal, I have logged on here. Now I do have a directory that's private and nobody can access it, only the team can, and this is not publicly visible. So don't get me wrong, don't go to Azure portal yet and look for managed instances. They are not there. I am kind of privileged because I work with this team, but it will come soon, right? This is the first iteration. It's a bare bone functionality, but it is there starting from yesterday, right? If I go here for more services, and I do a search for managed instances, there they are, right? Now a disclaimer, this may not be actual text when you ship it, but it's somewhere there, right? When I click on this, I get a list, and I was actually expecting 2 instances, but somebody created this third one since like an hour ago when I was playing with this. So we have 3 instances here. This is our test cluster. People are using it for testing. I can come and click on one of these managed instances, and just let me show you. It does says SQL managed instance, right? It's not, and even has a different icon, right? So, so that's like fully, including UX, we're developing it the right way, right? So We haven't done much except essentials yet, but you can see that the instance is in West Central US, and in fact, we're working on all regions, and we're likely going to have a high number of regions supported early on. And we have this instance is called Portal Test Premium. Premium is a little bit of legacy. It's business critical. It's similar to the premium tier in SQL Database, so developers keep calling it premium, although it's not completely the same thing. And of course, they placed it in a VNet, and somebody named the VNet cool, because this is the first deployment and it's all cool, right? And when I click on this cool VNet, I also open it. I open the settings for the VNet, right? And I can take a look, and I can see that this IP address is 10.0.1.4, right? So it's really a private IP address. So hopefully I have shown that Portal is coming also, and who knows next week what will be there, right? So if we will be doing this demo next week, who knows what I will show. Okay, so with that, I would like to go back to the slides. And let me uncover a little bit of our thinking about the timelines, right? So, public preview, we intend to enter by the end of this year. That is roughly our plan. We'll make the best effort to do it. And when we go into public preview, this is on a high level what our scope will be. So VNet, both Classic and Azure Resource Manager deployments. We'll have native backup restore that I have just shown. We will support CLR and SQL agent to a high degree of compatibility with on-premises. We will have transparent database encryption, SQL audit, and Azure Active Directory support. So that's the feature that Chris is waiting. Mm-hmm. So we can't let Chris, have Chris disappointed. Cross-database queries, service broker, and database migration service will go public preview somewhere around the same time. There will be a session on it. So these good folks here from the first row will tell you what are exact plans for database migration service, but we work closely together. We're going to try make things work out from the onset. And then later, we expect to go general availability in first half of 2018. And I really can't say when. I can't give you a month, because that will depend on largely customer feedback as well from public preview, right? You've noticed that we had lots of customers in private preview. We've been working with them for months. We intend to continue to do that during public preview. And their feedback may affect basically the scope for general availability. But we know that some things are coming relatively soon as we enter into public preview, and those things I have singled out here because we have somewhat higher confidence in them, right? And those are geo-replication, then automatic tuning and indexing. We will introduce support for that, threat detection, and we will very likely add additional instance sizes. So we are starting with 8 cores, 16 cores, 24 cores. If you don't fit early on into these sizes, don't worry, we'll introduce other sizes as well. You can also consolidate or do or split and so on, right? But we will continue to improve this offering and add more options. And with that having said, I will repeat the key takeaway, and then I will ask you for questions, and I ask you to stay for the QA session. The key takeaway is managed instance is the best PaaS destination for all SQL workloads with easy lift and shift migration. I invite you to sign up to get more info. We are pretty much closed with the private preview, but we will be sharing more information ahead of the public preview, and also we will be sharing information as we go into the public preview. What's going on, what is in there, what is coming soon, and so on. Thank you very much. So, questions?
secondly, is Canada one of your targeted regions?
So second question, Canada is one of our targeted regions. And for storage, I don't have numbers that I can share right now, but I think it's going to be similar to the performance of standard service tier in SQL database today. Basically, that's kind of what you can expect, because the storage implementation will be, for managed instance, very similar initially to the one we already have in SQL DB. Okay?
Hi. Wondering about the backup retention if we want more than 7 days. Is that going to use the same technology that was currently used with long-term backup retention in Azure SQL DB, or is it going to be a different mechanism?
So there will be two mechanisms, and Xiao Chen is nodding his head because he's our backup expert for SQL DB. So there's your guy for after the session. But for point-in-time restore, retention on automatic regular backups, we will initially offer 7 days for free, but we will also offer choice. You will be able to set it up. Now it's up to 90 days, I think. Is that roughly the plan? I think we're somewhere there. And then above that is long-term retention. Long-term retention is something you should be using for like 7 years of retention due to compliance requirements. 10 years, for up to 10 years, yes. But I just made up an example, like 7 years, right? And those are weekly backups. Those are not like the full chain backups. For point-in-time restore, we keep the full chain because we are offering the max granularity point-in-time restore.
Addition, in management instance, you can also issue a copy-only full backup, and you can start the copy-only full backup anywhere you want, and for like as long as you want, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years.
Thank you. That's right. Yeah.
Is that a guarantee, 50 years?
No, but those you will keep. When you take a user-initiated backup, then you keep it.
Yeah, right. Still, it's long. 50 years is a long time.
You mean from the compatibility point of view? Back compat, yeah. So next question, sorry.
You said it was going to support linked databases, database links?
Yeah, link servers, yeah.
Yeah, link servers. Can you have those be on-prem? So can you link between on-prem and off-prem?
So those could be on-prem if you have network connectivity to the server. And what we plan to support is SQL to SQL. SQL to Oracle, I'm not exactly sure when that is coming, or some other system. So depending on what you're connecting to SQL will be there first. That will take priority.
Thanks.
Yeah. Next one.
So in Azure SQL Database, we used to have the high availability and disaster recovery in the top of button. So how's it going to work in Azure Managed Instance? So
it will work in a very, very similar fashion. We will use the same underlying mechanisms. And you will also be able to, for HA, for example, you get it out of the box. Taking a general purpose or business critical tier, you get it out of the box in each variant with better SLAs in business critical. And the failover happens automatically. As soon as a primary goes down, we detect that, do a failover, it takes a matter of seconds, and then you can reconnect and continue to run your workload. So that's the HA. GeoDR, you can do two things. We will have geo-redundant backups. That's they get replicated up to an hour, I think every hour. And then you can restore that in another region. So that's a lower cost, but also much higher RPO kind of strategy. Active geo-replication is something you can set up today with SQL DB. We intend to provide the same type of functionality with managed instance. Several clicks, set it up to a managed instance in another region where you replicate the databases that you want to be DR proof. And that's up to 5 seconds RPO.
And the last question, so regarding always on availability groups in on-premises, so is there any possibility to have the lift and shift hybrid scenario when you have on-premises like primary and secondary replica on managed instance?
So you mean running, for example, a secondary in managed instance. Yeah. So we've heard that one a lot. We initially were not going to support it, but I heard the request.
We asked them for that earlier too.
Yeah, we heard that one. Can't really say when, but
because in my personal consultant area, it would be really interesting to have this feature set to move.
For what purpose? What would you like to do?
In case because a lot of customers is still running IaaS-based scenario, but they're just planning to move to something like offering like PaaS, but Azure SQL Database cannot be affordable in that case because there are some compatibility issues. So having this always-on scenario, you can have any issues on-premise, you can lift and shift.
So we will provide another means of doing minimum downtime migration from on-premise to managed instance, and it will work like you seed it with a backup restore, then you do a log replaying on the target side of managed instance. They come in sync. Then you stop running on-prem, just move to the managed instance, and then continue. So that's minimal downtime. It's not fully online, but that's something that the DMS folks are working on implementing. So Guru here is a good contact for that. For that scenario.
So I'm going to discuss.
Yeah. There are other scenarios where you are using secondaries and they are not migration. So we can talk about those scenarios as well. But for migration, we are going to implement it in other ways. Yeah.
Right.
What versions of the of the SQL Server database do you support with managed instance?
So in the cloud, the managed instance will be running on the latest bits. And actually, for migrating SQL Server workloads, the source systems could be SQL Server 2005 and later. But as they get migrated, they will also be upgraded.
They have to be upgraded?
Through the migration process, at restore, they will be upgraded.
Okay.
And I have shown you in the demo, basically the databases that I have restored went through database upgrade steps, right? Now, here are interesting couple of data points from the private preview and all of the people we talked about. And we actually ran a survey. 80% of people would actually prefer to run at the latest version. They just have risks with upgrades, and they are worried about issues that may come from upgrades, right? And that's what has historically kept people away from upgrading regularly, right? So we intend to support migrations from older versions. We also intend to focus on this scenario more and make sure that we provide compatibility and frictionless upgrade guarantees in the future period. But once you're in the cloud, just imagine the world when you are in the cloud, right? You cannot really stick to versions anymore, right? There's no point because it keeps moving on, right? So what we need to loosen up the focus on versions a little bit. I mean, we have created it because we have created the versions, and then people just got focused on versions, right? So we need to do a different thing now. We need to loosen up this focus on versions and focus ourselves on making these upgrade paths as smooth as possible. Right?
So one more question. So if you have a vendor-supported package and they're not at the latest version, how do you get them to move? You know, and maybe you've had that issue is getting them to support that newest version.
We are in discussions with a number of vendors. We realize this may be an issue. We are very well aware. So we will be creating initiatives with vendors and also figuring out how we remove the concern as much as possible. I can't really share any concrete plans yet, but we are very well aware of this issue. So we'll be focused on trying to solve it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next one's here, and then.
Thank you.
You think so? Okay.
So thank you. To expand on HA, you just said that we will be able to select the databases that we want to have HA for. And so the question is, would that include system databases like master and MSDB?
would that include system databases?
Yes.
Is that, okay. So the question is, when we set up HA for managed instance, will the master databases get replicated automatically as well?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Okay. The answer is yes. We are introducing this as we speak. It's being in the works. It will be done soon. And we will have the full HA. As the user databases get replicated, so does the metadata that is in the system databases.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Right. So currently in some regions with Azure SQL DB, VNets are in preview with the regular Azure SQL DB. So essentially Azure SQL DB will support both being in a VNet and not being in a VNet. Will it be possible to deploy managed instance outside of a VNet, or will it need to be inside a VNet?
So Azure SQL DB managed instance will initially only be in a VNet. We don't have a plan to make them outside of VNets yet. I am not familiar with how this is a widespread phenomenon, like lack of VNet support. How many regions are lacking this? Have you looked?
No. I'm just saying in Azure SQL DB there are I think currently 3 regions that support in preview VNets, right? For regular Azure SQL DB.
I see.
So eventually the idea is Azure SQL DB will support both, right? VNets and non-VNet. Yes. Right. Yes. So the question was, would Azure?
Okay. I got it. Yes. So our initial plan is to always create them in VNets, and then we intend to offer 2 options, like either have a public IP address on them directly or not have a public IP address on them directly. So that is roughly our plan. So who was first? I'm not sure. Yeah.
You mentioned about that 4-to-1 conversion from a licensing perspective. In our on-prem configuration, we oversubscribe CPU, and that option was not available in the infrastructure as a service when we move on, right? So here, that 1 physical core license can be translated into 4. Is that what I heard?
So I will give you a little bit more detail on it. This Azure hybrid use benefit will also, I think, offer a good way of migrating for people who are doing oversubscribing or unlimited virtualization. That's the scenario, right? Yes, where you have physical cores, you license those cores, and then you put multiple VMs on top of the physical infrastructure, right? So we are going to offer a translation between 1 on-premise core in Enterprise Edition, which allows you to do oversubscription, into 4 general purpose cores.
Even in IS?
No, in managed instance, 4 general purpose cores of managed instance, so you can create like 4 times the number of cores, but in general purpose tier, which will effectively give you the same thing you're doing, slightly less performance and basically performance for your app, but at a significantly lower cost.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi. For the database partition with multiple storage tier, that service will support similar.
So you are doing something like SAN for the most critical and most access data, and then like cheaper storage for archiving or something else.
Yeah, exactly. The data is partitioned by year. Everything's older than, let's say, 7 years. It's on different partition, different storage tier. Yeah. And then that service will support it.
So initially, we will not support mixed storage. Initially, we will not, for example, support a possibility to create a 8-core managed instance in business critical with 1 terabyte of business critical storage, and then add like 10 terabytes of remote storage, which would kind of fit the pattern, right? Initially, we will not support that. Going on in the future, I can't really say. We do have a project that would significantly improve options in this regard when it comes to very large storage in the cloud, but also with the capability of getting the I/O when you need it. And we can talk a little bit more about it offline. I can't share many information now.
And another thing is a cross database, query, like that's the value of instance. I got reference data database, but I assume that will be support based. Right now is the only way I get cross database.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You got to wrap up for them.
We need to. Okay, so we have two more, right? Okay, so we can do that. Yeah.
Any plan to support DTC or strategy on how to deal with that?
Distributed transaction coordinator. Yeah. Yes. So initially we will not have it initially. So cross DB joins and cross DB transactions will work within an instance. We also plan to support the same functionality across instances sometime after we go into public preview. That's the plan.
Okay. So maybe first half of 2018 or post.
Definitely first half of 2018. I hope sooner than the end of that half, but we'll see.
Is that I've heard Always On will support DTC in SQL 27.
Yeah, there's a fix. Okay. There is a fix because there was an issue there, and a fix was made, and yes, we have a dependency on the same fix.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have a question about on-prem. We have data collection for like a management data warehouse, and we also have MSX, TSX on-prem. If we set up a managed instance, will that be able to talk back? We'll be able to use that for target servers?
So you should be able to connect managed instance with anything on your on-premise network with this setup that I have shown. VNet connected to your on-premise network through VPN or express route. It should be able to connect. Now we can talk more about scenarios that you would like to use and what data are you getting. I'm not sure, for example, if you're collecting metrics from all of your instances, you may not be able to get some of the metrics from managed instances like Windows performance counters of some kind. Or,
like server.
There may be some subtleties there.
Yeah.
But connectivity should not be an issue.
What about the other way around? If I want to create a managed instance and then use that as my SQL data warehouse and or my master SQL agent master server. Can we use SQL agent master server on a managed instance?
Yeah, I didn't think about that scenario. Probably could, but we can talk in more detail and we can explore it.
Right,
we can explore it. Yeah, you could use it as a SQL data warehouse for sure, right? The only things are like when it comes to the concrete setup that you're doing, like what kind of agents you're running where, what you're doing with the instance. There may be some subtleties, but in general, there shouldn't be large issues, right?
Thank you.
Okay. So one last, and then we have to leave.
So hopefully this will be quick. Currently with Azure SQL DB, if there's a failover, it takes a little bit of time for the app to realize that the IP address has changed. Do you see that will improve with adding VNet's support?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We can test, but I'm not sure. So I mean, let's talk about the issue. I mean, why are you waiting for that? Don't you have a URL that is supposed to continue, not the URL, but a fully qualified name?
Right. But so in the case of auto failover with Azure SQL DB currently, if the auto failover happens, so even planned failover doesn't matter, but so if it happens, the FQDN doesn't change, but the IP address changes because I just failed over to a completely different region. So it takes, the TTL I think is 5 minutes, so it can take my app up to 5 minutes to realize that the IP has changed. So I'm not that familiar with VNets. I was just wondering if we're going to have this failover now to a different region, but the IP address probably wouldn't change. I don't know how the Azure Fabric would handle that. Would it go smoother or
I'm not
still
sure.
have some delay?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah. The same.
Thank you once more. Thank you very much.